We're here to welcome Deanna Lorianni, who's a communications specialist with 15 years experience specializing in plain language communication. But you can get all that from the bio on the website. So I'm going to give you the interesting details in her bio so I asked her for some juicy details. So one is that she's developing this new way to make books accessible that includes tactile images, Braille, low vision fonts, like all in one book for Color to Sound, which is another company she worked for. I thought that's really interesting. So not just plain language, she deals with all sorts of accessibility as well. It seems you branching out a bit. But she also plays the ukulele. Did you bring it?
Oh, no.
No, I was expecting the after party.
No, I should have.
Darn.
Next time.
Next time. But this is really cool. She was a gem runner. Does anyone know what a gem runner is?
No.
So basically she had to pick up gems, diamonds, rubies, all this for a jeweler and carry around these really expensive gems, and it was like being a spy. She's saying you couldn't tell people where you were going, all this.
Who I worked for, like what I did.
So.
That was in college, one of those random jobs that come your way. I'm like, sure, I'll do that. Cool. Yeah.
So without further ado, I'll let you get started. So big welcome to Deanna.
All right. I'm going to be honest, and clickers and me are not usually good friends, so I'll do my best. Thank you for being here the last session of the day. I want to just do a big kudos to you guys for organizing this awesome 2-day summit. It's been so rich with a lot of various topics, and I'm just honored to be one of them. And thank you all for finishing your day here with me. Plain language, I'm a geek about, and I can get real geeky about this, and not everyone is probably geeky about this, so I appreciate you entering into this space with me. In addition to, I'm here on behalf of my Clear Communications consultancy, Logophile. I also serve as Clear Communications Director for an organization called Dress Syndrome Foundation, a patient advocacy, the only known patient advocacy organization for rare disease, Dress syndrome. And then I have Color to Sound, and we build accessible art experiences. So I have my hands dabbled in little things, and today I'm going to focus on the business of being clear. Why you need plain language. Why? Does anyone have an idea? Is plain language new to you? I've heard of it. It's good. Not everyone has. All right, so in a nutshell, I got 25 minutes. I'll do my best. We're going to go over what is plain language and why does it matter. I guess I should look here. That's really hard to see. What are some strategies and how do you get started at a high level, right? So to start, I want you to raise your hand if you have ever downloaded an app and checked the terms and conditions box that you read it without actually reading it because that terms and conditions sucked in terms of how to get through it. All right. I want you to, 2 hands. I want you to, every day, right? Who's reading these? No one. And there's a reason why. Who has gotten an email and you're maybe from a colleague or a business partner, doesn't matter, whatever, business client, and you're like, I have no idea what they're trying to say. What in the world is this about? So you email them back trying to get clarification, and then they're like, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, I am just now more confused, and you just go back in this costly exchange. Anyone done that before? Who's received a medical communication or a financial document that you literally have no idea what this is about, and you're supposed to do something about this? Everyone. Complex, confusing content fills our life. No matter where you look in your life, this is affecting you. And this is a major problem. So here's just an example of what is not plain language. So here we have an elevator. They tried to specify which floor you should be going to, but nothing aligns to the actual buttons. To make it worse, there is Braille here, and there's no Braille here. Right? So if you're actually trying to correlate some sort of information here and you need to use Braille, you are left out of that experience. So here's one. One of my cousin's husbands actually took this picture while he was traveling. I'm like, yank. How do you get to Carnesville? Anyone know how you actually get there? All roads lead to Carnesville. Now imagine your GPS is out, right? You're in the country, your GPS is out, you didn't print out the directions because who's really doing that? And now you actually don't even know where you're supposed to go, right? And maybe you have a very important, maybe a family's sick or something's going on. You haven't been visiting where they are or something like this. Yeah, that's not plain language. How about this? This is actually my sister was trying to she's going through a contract she had to enter into. She's a producer and that's one sentence, y'all. One sentence, 473 words. Embedded list, embedded list, embedded list, embedded list is when you put a list inside a sentence over and over. And I mean, this is just who and why. Why? No one, even lawyers and judges, struggle to read stuff like this. So that's definitely not plain language. This website, I'm not going to call out the company just because I'm not going to publicly shame them, but this, I'm sure y'all can see, what's some things going on with this website that you might find issues with. Contrast, very, very hard. Even if you have, stronger vision, it's still hard. I'll tell you this, I tried to not accept that, and it didn't let me. I was forced into accepting something that maybe I didn't want to do in order to use this website. So this, not plain language. This is what? A tree that fell in the woods, right? What's that saying?
Anyone here?
Does anyone hear it? If a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear, does it actually make a sound? And this is what we should be thinking about with our communications. Just simply putting something out there, whether or not it's a website or an app or a report or an email, it really doesn't matter what it is. Putting it out there is not enough to say that you've communicated. Because if no one is on the other side of that to actually be able to understand it, to be able to access it, to be able to make sense of it and act on it, you're this tree in the forest that has fallen and no one's there to hear you. So this is what I want us to all get out of doing, is being this tree. So what is plain language? This, the content's wording, structure, and design are so clear that people can easily find what they're looking for, use what they find, and act on that information. Find what they're looking for, understand, and then use the information, sorry. And this is a globally accepted definition of plain language. So, and that means from start to finish. It's not just say, that page of website content. This is from how they are getting to that website content. How are they finding the information that they need? How are they able to understand that content once they're there? And if there's anything they need to do with that information, can they actually do it? Do they actually know what this information is for, and is it relevant to them? So really, plain language, I think it's an easier way to understand it, is that it's clear communication across your entire ecosystem. Everything that you should be doing with the way that you communicate at work, internally, externally, it doesn't matter, needs to embrace these principles. And plain language in and of itself is a kind of, within the niche of this industry of communications, it's kind of a challenging term because we have to spend time going over, well, plain, that just sounds like boring, right? And language, or is it just words? And it's so much bigger than that. Plain language is good for CX and UX. It embraces inclusivity. It embraces accessibility. It's essential for transparency. So if you're in a regulated industry and you're being held to regulated standards for being transparent, like finance, you need plain language to help you. Otherwise, you may accidentally be, breaking the law in that way. But also, transparency is good for trust. It's for all sectors, all communication, everyone. It really is. I mean, it's amazing to me this is a niche in communication, because we should just be learning what this means from the very start. As soon as we start learning to communicate as people in this world, these principles should guide us. And how beautiful of a world. Think of all the relationships in our lives that would be saved if we actually learned to do this. So believe it or not, and this is so exciting for the plain language industry, we've been pushing for this for years. An ISO standard now exists, pushed forward by the International Plain Language Federation. They are the international body for the 3 member organizations around the world for plain language. And so there's the first one that came out, the governing principles and guidelines around plain language. And then what just came out a few months ago was plain legal language. And this is super exciting because within the legal industry, there's been pushback, right, of our traditional herein, whereto, out there, blah, 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 that big contract sentence that you saw. But you actually protect yourself better. People protect themselves better. Companies protect themselves better when you use plain legal language. So it's so exciting that there's an ISO standard to guide us and to show that this is real, right? There's more coming down the pipeline. There are science, design, and requirements for organization are coming. I think science is going to be the first one to publish. So if this is, within the space of, this excites you, I encourage you to check it out and look it up. Oh, and one thing about this too. One of the things I just learned at the Plain Language Conference just happened a couple weeks ago. And Canada, I'm so excited for this, has actually one of the main plain language organizations founded by Canadians. So,
they're very plain people.
yeah, in such a good, charming, lovely way, though. And what was I about to say? Oh, they are using now the ISO standard, the first one for governing principles, to create a standard that will be open, accessible for free for accessibility, aligned with these plain language ISO standards. And this is really exciting because the accessibility world needs this, and I'm just pumped for this to come out. So this is actually, I want to show, all right, so I showed you some quick little examples of like, oh, that's not plain language. This website, Rocket Mortgage, if anyone's familiar with them, they actually this year won the best website at the Clearmark Awards, which is the North American Awards for plain language communications. I think there's some more things that we could do with a little bit of color contrast, but the focus is one, it's easy to understand, you can get through the website easily, and so it was really cool to see a financial company step up and do this. Here is where Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Western New York redid how they're sharing statements. And you can see, they have why you are receiving this. There's icons to help people correlate information. You're chunking information. We're not overwhelming the text. We are leaving white space. We're leading with the most important information first. We're not burying the lead, right? So this was a pretty successful redesign that they did. Here's one that during COVID, the government, CDC put this out to help businesses be able to tell their people if they're doing COVID screening, what they need to do and how to be safe on a website, and it looked like this. So just imagine how stressed we were, right, during COVID, and scared and fearful. And if you're a screener, I bet you were extra scared and fearful. And then you're given this to like quickly look at. Maybe you don't even have a lot of time, and this is 2 sentences. But it's super not easy. So here's another way I turned it. It was just like, how can we do this better? Now, of course, again, with a table and accessibility, you want to make sure you're building a table responsibly for accessibility if you're going to use it. But there's a better way, right? You make it pop off the screen, and you make it so that I'm not having to weed through all this information to make sense and stuff, because it's very difficult on the brain. It really is. We need to make things pop. And so why does it matter? How am I doing on time? Oh, okay. Why does it matter? Well, at the heart of plain language, and this is one of the things that really attracted me to the industry years ago, I've been doing specific plain language work since 2012. Before that, I was already doing it and didn't know it. And then I found the people of it, and it's rooted in that everyone deserves to understand the information in their lives. And it really doesn't matter what that information is. It could be marketing information, or it could be important health-related information. It doesn't matter. We have a right as humans to understand this. And this is the guiding principle across the plain language community and those that are pushing forward in government and whatnot. The EU has a big program around clear language, and this is the guiding principle. And I just think it's so beautiful, right? Well, other reasons why this matters. In the US, the average adult reads at around an 8th grade level. So it's maybe a little surprising. You'd think that perhaps literacy levels would be a little bit higher. But when we look at an average, it is about an 7 to 8th grade level. And then, of course, there's more dips within that, depending on, is English your second, third, fourth language? Do you have any kind of reading difficulties? So on and so forth. And it's not just about reading. I mean, plain language can affect even audio. Like, again, it's all communication. People with disabilities are the single largest minority group in the US, and anyone at any point can join this community. And we overlook them. I mean, gosh, the purchasing power. If people actually embraced and made accessible websites, there's billions of dollars lost because people are not caring to be clear and accessible, right? Leaving people behind. Financial and health literacy levels are incredibly low. This continues to plummet. We can't expect people to understand anything if we are not being mindful of the fact we don't uphold good literacy levels around financial and health, and at least in this country, but this is pretty consistent when we look at global readings on this. And trust in government and corporations is at an all-time low, continuing to plummet. Plain language can help a lot of this, all of this. Plain language opens up trust, because you open up transparency, you open up understanding, you open up access, you open up inclusivity. You care to be clear. Yes, but aren't you just dumbing down the content? Hear this all the time. We're just dumbing it down, right? You're taking my beautiful words and just maybe something that's short, and now it sounds ugly or plain, right? The problem with maybe that word plain. Well, what you do with plain language is it's audience-focused information. What is clear to one audience may be conveyed differently to another audience. And as long as you're strategically making that shift, you are going to maintain clear communication principles because it starts with the audience and who they are and their needs. You're bringing specificity in. You're opening up clarity. You're removing confusion, right? And everything else that this goes along. So it's not dumbing it down. You smarten it up when you're precise and crisp and caring and empathetic and mindful and purposeful. That's being smart and strategic. But it means only changing words, right? So I only, really need to look at the language, and after that, we're kind of done. And that is absolutely not the case. Every aspect of how you're creating a communication or a content piece, it needs to be considered, from the user journey to the structure to the design, everything, to the words. And in fact, that part 1 of the ISO standard, recent study on it, found that only 7% is actually dealing with words. So it really is the whole ecosystem of that communication, the right message for the right person in the right channel. It will alter the meaning of traditional industry language. This is a really common worry, especially with like the legal industry, scientific, academia, you name it. Worried that, well, I'm used to using this. I hear a lot, this language has been litigated. And so what? If your people who are needing to read this cannot understand it, you are not protecting your people, you're protecting the litigation. So you must always retain meaning. You can't translate this into something else and be clear, right? And it disrespects educated audiences. And so there's this belief that, well, I communicate a lot with people, very smart engineers or scientists or PhDs or whatever it is. And one of the cool things that research is showing is that the more education someone has, the more demand for plain language there is. It seems like it wouldn't be the case, but it increases. There's more awareness around that it doesn't have to be this way. And so more education does not equate to more complication. So you may be surprised, maybe you know, that plain language is actually law. And again, this is a global movement. So I focus mostly on the US, and this is not an all-encompassing list. There is the Plain Writing Act of 2010, signed by President Obama, that the Center for Plain Language, the North American Advocacy Group for Plain Language, helped guide into place, requires all federal agencies to use plain language strategies, and across everything that the public receives from them, websites, forums, emails, doesn't matter. SEC Rule 421D and amended Rule 421B for financial prospectuses require that information to use plain language. So when financial advisory firms and such are talking about what they do, who they serve, you have to use plain language. It's regulated. And if you're not learning how to do that, you're going to get fined. HIPAA, actually, the health privacy policies must use plain language. Are you using it? Are they doing it, right? The Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974 requires that most of the voluntarily established retirement and health plans need to be communicated in plain language to their audiences. The Dodd-Frank Act requires it, and GDPR, which has been a big effect in American companies, right, requires using plain language strategies. And then the ADA, while they don't actually require plain language, I wish they did, they do require effective communication. And plain language will help you uphold the goal for effective communication. And there's many, like California has a state law, Washington state. So on a state level and on a city level, stuff's moving forward too, and it's really encouraging to see. So let's talk a little bit. This is the business case for being clear. What is the cost of confusion? So there's that feel-good element that this is really important for humanity. It's important for people. It's important for democracy. The amount that I heard that at the Plain Language Conference, and I always hear this, right? To uphold democracy, we need to be clear and we need to use plain language principles so people know what they're voting on and things of the such, but I could go down a whole rabbit hole with that. So the cost of confusion. Miscommunication costs the average 100-person company $420,000 every year. Ineffective communications cause 1 in 5 business projects to fail, risking $75 million every 1 billion spent. A business with 100,000 employees can lose an average of 62.4 million a year to poor communications. I mean, the numbers they keep getting worse, right? It's poor communications account for 40% of the cost of managing business communications transactions. So this is why imagine if we all started from a get-go of caring to be clear. And not only are we helping our people, whoever we are engaging with our audiences, we can help overcome this drag on our business, which is so not necessary. So here's some examples of moving it forward. So that was the cost. Let's look at the opportunity. So the Veterans Benefit Administration rewrote one letter to veterans. And this was like a letter, I think it was about claiming beneficiaries, but I could be mistaken. Either way, it was a 1-page letter. So they would send it out. They wouldn't get people responding. They'd send out another, print and send out another. The third time, think of all the cost of doing that, creating it, writing it, designing it, whatever. They rewrote one letter. I want you to guess, what do you think the savings was? If you could just, an organization, the agency of that size, what kind of savings?
10 million.
All right, we got a 10 million. Anyone else?
15 million.
15.
$1 billion.
$1 billion. Well, y'all are thinking in the right level. It was $4.4 million. Think about that. One letter. So if you applied this across all the letters that the government sends, or maybe your organization sends out, or email, whatever, that's a lot of savings potential because you're not having to send tons of emails or printed mail or whatever it is again and again and again. You're not having to field calls of confusion because people don't know what's going on. So $4.4 million. Alan Bradley, they rewrote manuals into plain language. And their help calls reduced by 99%. Support calls went from 50 a day to 2 a month. They were able to put employees on other more pressing, important tasks because this streamlined so much. Things were clear, people understood. They're not having to waste the resources by fielding confusion. And it's not just confusion, it's frustration. Depending on a communication piece, it could be fearful, depending on who's sending the email or the message. TIAA rewrote an investor letter about taking their required minimum distributions for plain language. They rewrote this. And one of the cool things, this is by the Plain Language Group, actually a colleague of mine, and one of the cool things about this, not only did people better understand, so the original letter started with referencing the IRS. And so people were so afraid, they hardly could get through the letter. They thought that they were going to be arrested. No joke. They thought they were going to be arrested. Imagine that fear, right? And they're like, what? So they're calling, they're so confused. They rewrote it. Not only did it improve the experience, it brought in millions of dollars of new investments, and they weren't even expecting that, right? People felt so good about the situation. They felt more confident in it, and they felt more encouraged to continue doing business. This is the power of being clear. So there is that feel-good element, but when you want to make a good impact to the bottom line, it truly makes a difference. So I wanted to quickly go over, I do whole workshops and training on plain language strategies, but I'm going to do my best to give some high-level tips for you guys. So if you follow the ISO, there's 4 things that it breaks down. 1, information must be relevant. People can get what they need. 2, it needs to be findable, right? So people can easily find what they need. 3, it's that understandable. And 4, it's usable. Because if you take any aspect of this away, it's broken, right? If it's relevant and findable and understandable to an extent, but they don't actually know what to do with it, it's not plain language and your communication's broken. You're now the tree that's fallen in the forest and no one can hear you. So actually, this really aligns. Am I okay with time? I can't really tell.
You got a few minutes.
Okay. Just some of the things I heard in one of the marketing panels today, that was just like, you need to turn, Sharm said, you need to turn headings into questions in order to lift the experience with AI. AI likes that, right? That's a plain language principle, question headers. That you need it targeted, specific for the audience's needs. That's that relevancy. So, focus on audience needs. What's relevant to one audience and clear to one audience may not be clear to another, and tailor it for that, and be very strategic. Give the right information in the right channel at the right time. Plan for the entire content journey. It's not just one communication piece, it's everything. Findable. Information design enables people to find the details, right? That the navigation is intuitive and easy. Purposeful, purpose is upfront and obvious always. We shouldn't ever have to find, why am I receiving this? I should never feel this way with your communication. Use information hierarchy and to support those audience needs. Headers and subheaders, again, question headers are great, but break up the chunks. And I know a lot of people here working in the web space, hopefully are already doing a lot of this. So if it's understandable, use language your audience uses. And that was a point that I've heard today too, how important it is to use language your audience uses. So one of the things with communication, communication's never about you. You as the communicator, it is not about you, ever. Because without that or the person on the other side, who are you talking to? It is about their needs. And with that person, the message always needs to be for them. So really diving into what that means for your audience. Avoid the jargon, the legalese, and if you must use it, you must give that understanding to the people who are using that information. Define it. Continue to do so if you need, if the information's long. It's that direct, short sentences and paragraphs. Visuals, because we're visual creatures. And the tone. Plain language leans into a warm, helpful, friendly tone. You need to sound human. And then usable action steps are clear and obvious. And things like all hyperlinks, forms, downloads, etc. are up to date and work. Evaluate the content. So this is a big thing. And a lot of companies will not put funding toward this step. And it's one of the things, it's like it hurts my soul whenever this happens, because they just want to do this whole fix, really embed plain language into their communications culture, but they're not going to test anything. And you need to test twice. Test the source document or the source info and then test it again, right? That's nice, but you know, AI. And so AI does do a okay job. It leans into the plain language way of communicating. But everyone is an editor now, right? If you're using it to brainstorm, you're still an editor. If you're using it to write something, if you're not a writer and you're using it for anything, you're still an editor. And we have to shift our, oh my gosh, my phone's on silent. Sorry about that. Everyone's an editor. So we need to look at, if you don't know how to make plain language work, and this again, this was just such a high level of what it means to infuse plain language into your culture. But if you're not doing it and making AI work for you, then it's gonna, like, well, we hear, right? The crap goes in, the crap goes out. You're not gonna be able to set efficient prompts to use, to set those styles and standards to make sure you're actually reaching the audience needs from a plain language perspective. And then edit that base content for true clarity. And of course, just making sure that across the ecosystem that you are infusing this as you rely on AI to help you. So where do you start? At an enterprise level, it is super important. You need to see this not just as, I rewrote this letter to use simple words and short sentences. This really is a culture shift. Change management can get involved depending on the size of the company. You need to include the executives. This will only sustain in a company if you actually have buy-in from the very top. Whenever it's at a departmental level, like what a lot of things can happen, right? It'll break down. What if someone leaves that role, right? Or whatever. So it really is important, if you're trying to move this forward, make sure to include those executives, and those business cases can really help set the case for it. And we must train all employees, not just the writers, designers, legal, legal and compliance. I mean, everyone, HR, everyone should be trained. And make sure to audit and analyze that content for readability and effectiveness. And then a good starting place, because it can feel overwhelming, especially when you have so much information that you're putting out there, depending on the size of the organization. Focus on the high priority content, right? If there's one page of your website or one document that really is causing a lot of call-ins to the organization, that's probably a good trigger to say, hey, something's off here. Let's analyze this from a plain language perspective and make this work for us. And then you can start that trickle effect of, once it's worked there, then you can start applying it across your departments. And again, there's that usability testing. And just keep going. Don't give up. Because habits take time. And with writing, I mean, there's so much I wish I could share today about how language and writing affects our mind when we read and what that means and what positive and negative sentiment means. How do we share sentence emphasis? Why don't we learn this, right? Makes us powerful communicators. And so keep going, don't give up. So on an individual level, unlearn how college taught you to communicate. For any, academia, if there's any academia in the room, I have so much love for you. But we're not teaching people to be clear communicators. We're teaching them to write thick papers full of big words and big sentences and the exact opposite of being clear. So we need to start refreshing, relearning what it means to be a communicator. And really embrace, put yourself into your audience's shoes. I hope you're already doing this with your website content, but go deeper if you're not, and looking through it, this plain language lens of what it means from a clear communication standpoint, not just an audience conversion or whatever else. Take trainings and then consider joining plain language organizations because they are out there and they often have meetups where you can have learning opportunities. And there's some you can do and you don't have to be a member, but it doesn't hurt to become a member. To that point, know these organizations. A little disclaimer, I'm on the board of the Center for Plain Language. This is the advocacy group for North America. They do the Clearmark Awards, and again, they're the ones that push forward that Plain Writing Act. Clarity is the legal plain language, international legal plain language organization full of people like me, but then also judges and lawyers who get that this matters. There's Plain Language Association International, the kind of full encompassing of all sectors. And then International Plain Language Federation, is like the house for these three member organizations. And so I really encourage you, keep this on your radar. Plain has a really robust LinkedIn group that you can join, and people are just talking about what this means and what you need to care, sharing research on how people read, how people consume information, and things of the such. So I really encourage you to check that out. Oh, you want me to go back? Sorry. And I am communications chair of this federation, so just another disclaimer. But in a nutshell, I just hope, if nothing else, you've left today with a new perspective around why it matters that we care to be clear, and that not only is this good for business, this truly is good for humanity, and at the end of it all, we're humans interacting with humans. Even when the rise of chatbots are coming, we're going to crave that human interaction even more. And so just thank you for caring. Thanks for being here.